Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to have you here again tonight. This is our final Gardener's Toolbox session for the year of 2020. I think this makes our 11th since we started in the spring. So it's been a great run, and we will restart these again in January. So be watching your calendars, newsletters, Master Gardener emails, however you got on here. We'll be doing this again in the spring. But if you have any topics that you're interested in, there is a survey at the end of tonight's session. Please fill that out. It's 3 questions. The first one is, did you learn anything? Do you plan to implement anything? And the final one is, what other suggestions? So that would be a great place to put that. So with that, I think most everybody's here. So we'll go ahead and get started tonight. If you've been to these sessions before, you know me. I'm Carol Waters. I'm the County Director for Extension here in West Potawatomi and also a horticulturist, so this is right in my wheelhouse. Tonight we're talking about shrubs, and in the spring we'll be talking about trees more so, but there was a lot of interest in shrubs and some different shrubs. So tonight we're going to be talking just a little bit about some different shrubs that are available that do well in Iowa. I've split it up into a couple of different categories. The first category is deciduous shrubs, and those are going to be a little more common and easier to find. The evergreens at the end are going to be a little bit harder, and we'll talk about that. As always, this is going to be recorded, or it is recording, and it will be on our YouTube channel starting probably tomorrow morning. So if you missed something tonight, or you just want to watch it again, or whatever, it will be on our YouTube channel. It's the West Potawatomi Extension and Outreach YouTube channel, and all of our sessions can be found there. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about shrubs. And we're going to start with, what is a shrub? And I truly looked it up today on dictionary.com, and it's really just a woody plant, smaller than a tree, and has multiple stems. And that's pretty vague. Typically, we talk about how tall it is, what it looks like, what its leaf pattern is, but shrubs, it's a little ambiguous. It's just a woody plant that's smaller than a tree. For horticulturists and arborists, you may have seen this graphic before. I use it quite often to gauge size of trees in presentations. So for scale, the house is a 1-story house, 20 feet tall at the roof. So a shrub is somewhere between 10 to 15 feet tall, typically, again, multi-stemmed. Now there's some exceptions to those rules, and usually those are man-made exceptions. And that's when you see something on a standard where it's a shrub that has been grafted on a trunk, basically. And we call it on standard. Occasionally you'll see that, and that people say, well, it's a single stem. Well, kinda. It's been grafted onto a single stem. So we are going to be talking in the shrubs tonight. So as I said before, we're going to break it up a little bit into deciduous shrubs and evergreen shrubs, conifers. And with deciduous shrubs, really it's shrubs that do well in Iowa. And secondly, kind of Carol's favorites. This isn't a definitive list. This isn't the end-all be-all list. It's things that I really like that I think people should be aware of a little more often. So this has been a favorite of mine for a long, long time. It's pretty common. It is a smoke bush. You'll see it offered as a smoke bush, or its real name is Catinus. They're usually around 10 to 15 feet tall, and the blooms is what gives it that feathery, smoky look. It does bloom on old growth, so you want to avoid spring pruning if you want it to bloom. Now, every few years, you are going to need to prune it up some, and you're going to just skip a year of blooming. Reason this one's really popular, has some pink to sometimes yellowish flowers from May till July. It has amazing fall color, but it's really the blooms. It's just a really lovely plant, and it comes in a variety of colors, and the foliage comes in a variety of colors, and the fall color is second to none. So this is an up-close picture. On the left is an up-close picture of the flowers. That's what gives it that smoky look. And on the right, of course, is that beautiful fall color. And there's a lot of different varieties out there for sale. It's pretty common. It's easy to find. A lot of them, what you see will be like a royal purple. It has a dark red purplish leaf year round, but they all have this amazing fall color. Excuse me. So if you're looking for something fairly large, this does a really nice job. It has very little disease or insect problems. They're really hardy. They like full sun. They'll take semi-shade. They're just a nice all-around shrub. This is one that I think gets overlooked quite often. It's the bottlebrush buckeye. It's an Aesculus. It's related to your buckeye trees. They can be about 8 to 10 feet tall and 8 to 15 feet wide, depending on the cultivar you choose. They have these really nice white blooms that come up, literally up. So that's where it gets its name of bottlebrush. They like full sun to part shade. They're native to more southeastern US, but they do really well here. So anywhere you can grow a buckeye, you can grow this as well. It doesn't have the large buckeye seeds though. So if you're hoping for that, it doesn't have that aspect of it, but it does have the great foliage. It also has amazing fall color again. Has this beautiful gold leaves that are just really bright and really stunning. So this is just a close-up of the flowers. Butterflies really like them. You can tell they're just made for butterflies to stick their proboscis in to get nectar. So this is one to truly consider if you have some space, or if you have that corner that it needs something a little bit bigger, but you just want to put it out there and leave it alone. This is your plant. But the fall color, I think that gold is second to none. This is one that I think more people should be looking at. I know we like hydrangeas, and everybody wants those standard pom-pom hydrangeas that are either pink or blue, depending on the pH. And those are just a little too fussy for this area. Highly advise paniculata, hydrangea paniculata. If you drove by the zoo this year, they have a stunning display right behind their sign, and I think it's often overlooked. But it was just a mass all summer, and it was just gorgeous. They can get pretty big. They're 8 to 12 feet tall, 7 to 10 feet wide. So if you go past the zoo and you see that there's just a whole row on both sides of the zoo entrance, that's what they are. They're panicled hydrangeas. They have these great creamy white flowers that'll turn to pink, and sometimes they're pink, depending on the cultivar you get. They like full sun, full bright sun. Oh, excuse me. They can handle some part sun though as well. That doesn't mean they can handle part shade. So part sun just means they still have more sun than they do shade, whereas part shade means they have a little more shade than they do sun. This is one of the hardiest and most tolerant hydrangeas out there. They do well in our soils. They do well in the hot, dry summer. They do well with the cold winter. They're just a really hardy plant that I think a lot of people overlook. And there's a lot of varieties out there now. So this is an up-close picture of the panicles on the flowering part, which gives it that big showiness. And then there's also some that are out that are these nice pink ones. There's a few different variations on pink. Just a real stunner. And it goes into fall just beautifully, and it dries beautifully, and you can bring them into the house. It's just a nice, you can bring them into the house as a cut stem. It's just a nice plant that I think we tend to overlook. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A box or in the chat. This is another one of the hydrangeas that, again, kind of gets overlooked because it's not that pretty pom-pom pink or blue. It's the oak leaf hydrangea, and you can see it's pretty easy to see where its name come from. Horticulturists are fairly unoriginal with our naming, actually. So has these big, beautiful oak leaves, but it is truly a hydrangea. They get about 6 to 8 feet wide and tall. So it's going to be a nice mounding type bush. It starts blooming in June, runs through the summer, has nice white clusters of blooms, and then they fade kind of to a pink color. The only issue I would have with this one, or caveat that I would have with this one, is you might see some winter dieback if you put it in a really exposed area. So say on the northwest corner of your house where you get a lot of that cold wind, you might want to put it in a place that has a little more protection. But even if you do have a little dieback, it's going to come right back out of it in the spring. And this time of year, we talk a lot about fall color. And again, it has a beautiful fall color. It's that deep, vibrant red that we all like to see. So you get one of these, you get the bottle brush buckeye, and you can have a really nice cyclone display in your backyard. This is another one that I think just doesn't get enough attention because it's so low maintenance. It's such an easy keeper. This is called Summer Sweet. Most people know it by Clethra. So Clethra alnifolia. It's going to stay small, 3 to 8 feet tall, depending on the cultivar, 4 to 6 feet wide. This is a great one to plant, say, by your front porch, by your deck, because it has a really sweet smell to it. So it's a really lovely smell. It's not overpowering. It's a really nice plant. It has white to pink blooms. It'll take part shade to full shade. So if you have a deck that's under, a big tree, this will do just fine there. This is also native to America. So it's a native to Eastern North America. It does really well with our winters. And butterflies and hummingbirds love this plant. So if you really like butterflies or attracting hummingbirds, this is one to look at. And then this is a close-up picture of the flowers again. You could see why, again, that hummingbirds and butterflies would like it, those nice long flowers that have a deep throat where the proboscis can go in. The other side is what the pink kind of looks like. It's really known for its white, but you can find pink varieties out there. I've been a fan of CINQUEFOIL for a long time. Potentillas, you can find them all over the place. They're super showy. And it's another one of those, you throw it at the ground and it's gonna do what it's gonna do. It takes terrible conditions. You see it a lot next to hot, dry beds between parking lots and concrete buildings because it's the only thing that can live there. And they thrive in that environment. Tend to stay pretty small, 2 to 4 feet tall, 3 to 5 feet wide if it's a spreader. It blooms truly from June till frost. So it's been blooming this whole time, and it's probably still trying to hang on if it's in a protected spot. But it comes in a wide variety of colors. There's lots of reds, oranges, yellows, whites, creams, kind of across the whole spectrum. It's just a nice little plant. A lot of people don't think about it because the leaves aren't big and showy, and in the nursery it's not as showy as some others. But It likes full sun, it likes harsh conditions, it doesn't care what the soil type is, it'll grow. So if you have a new construction site, this is one to consider because the soil is typically a little rougher after new construction. It takes a few years to rebuild the soil back up. This is one that will do well. And every few years, you want to cut these back pretty hard within about 6 inches of the ground because they get leggy, they look tired, they're just, eh. You want to cut them back and they will just come right back for you. These are just an amazing plant that get overlooked quite often. It doesn't have much for fall color, but we can forgive that because it takes really harsh conditions the rest of the year. So this is an example of the pink and the orange that you can get. They're readily available in the market, easy to find, just really good, solid, competent plants. I like to throw this one in there because it's a little different and it's just kind of fun. It's a button bush, Cephalanthus occidentalis. They can get a little larger, 5 to 12 feet tall, 4 to 8 feet wide, depending on the cultivar again. Tend to be just blooming in June. So I wouldn't recommend a whole hedgerow of these if you're really looking for something that has lots of color all year round. But it's a fun one. It has these little white ball-shaped flowers that I kind of think of the 50s retro look. And why we like this one, it will tolerate some wet soils. It doesn't mind wet feet. All the others, they don't tend to prefer the wet feet as much, but this one will take wet feet. So if you have a spot where it tends to not dry out real quick, after hard rain, there might be pooling water there for a little bit. This is the shrub to put in that spot because they can tolerate that. And then it just has so again, here's the cute little flowers. I think they look like the little retro 50s planetary type thing. And then it does have a nice fall berry look to it. Where the flower was. So it does have some fall interest, but you don't really get it for that. You get it for that June flowering pretty much. Its fall color isn't spectacular. It's okay, but the fruiting is nice on it. And I know that people aren't always fans of lilacs, and I love lilacs, and I would be remiss if I didn't throw this out there. There are lots of lilacs out there, and when I think of lilacs, I probably think like you do, the shrubs that were at grandma's house that bloomed in the spring, and that's exactly what we're talking about. But it's really more, we're talking more than just about those. All lilacs, there's about 26 different species of lilacs, over 4,000 cultivars. So there's way more than just that one plain old Syringa vulgaris that has been planted for years on end. The good thing about that one, and I love vulgaris, is it does well here. That's why your grandma could grow it. That's why our kids will be able to grow it. It just does well here. It does have some disease and insect issues, but they're pretty normal, pretty common, and easy to control. So depending on your cultivar that you like, they can be 4 feet tall to 20 feet tall, depending on that species and cultivar. And you can get in a huge variety of colors anymore: white, purple, lilac, violet, pink, red, across the whole spectrum. They do need good drainage. That's usually the key with lilacs. Good drainage, full sun, and good airflow through the plant. So you want to make sure to prune out a little bit every year so it gets nice airflow. That'll help with the powdery mildew. If you don't want to do that, every 5 years or so, cut it back, let it regrow. They're pretty easy keepers after they get established. And of course, We grow them so we can bring some into the house in the spring, and that's one of my favorite bouquets in the spring is just a bouquet of lilacs. So all the different colors there. There's also some blues you can get, some darker pinks. It's all across the spectrum. So I'm going to talk a little bit about evergreen shrubs, and this is my caveat for evergreens. My work in the past was with conifers, and I have a thing for the specialty plants. I didn't include things that are pretty common like blue rug juniper or star juniper. Most people know those. I tried to pick out a few that were really different, but that tends to mean they're a little harder to find. So that's my caveat tonight, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So when we talk about conifers, there's a language that goes with conifers, especially shrubs, because a lot of them are offshoots, witches' brooms of large conifers that have become dwarf or miniatures. And that's kind of what we're talking about. We're going to probably stick in that dwarf category tonight. And we just have a handful because they're a little bit hard to find. You have to kind of be a connoisseur. But if you're really into conifers, I highly suggest you look online for the American Conifer Society. It's a whole group dedicated just to conifers. Anyone can join. They have a quarterly magazine that they send out. If you're not super into conifers, but you kind of want to learn more, they also have a really great search function on their website. So any of these you can find on their website. Just search for American Conifer Society. They've done a really nice job of keeping it updated of what's new, what's changed, because this does change regularly. And they have great pictures, and all the pictures in this section come from the American Conifer Society. So we're going to stick in that dwarf section. And when we talk conifers, we're talking slow growth. And the first question people call me with a lot of times with trees and shrubs is, I want something that'll grow fast. Then you don't want conifers. They tend to be those slow growers, and we kind of like them that way. So I have planned for the spring a colorful conifer talk because, like I said, this is kind of what my work's been in, and there's lots of colors when we think of conifers, not just green. You can get yellows and purples and whites and reds and all kinds of really fabulous color combinations. Some of it's the fruiting bodies, some of it's the flowers, some's actually the foliage. So if you're interested in conifers, stay tuned for this spring. But tonight, I'm just going to throw out a couple that I think are worth noting and probably some of the easier ones to find on the market. So I used to work in a nursery, and the first thing anyone would ask is, I want something with color. And I'd always tell them, well, green is a color, but they want color that's not green. So this quickly became a favorite of mine. The picture doesn't do it justice at all. And this is a false cypress. All false cypress fall under the category of Chamaecyparis species. This one specifically is called Passifera, Chamaecyparis passifera golden mop. You'll also see it as golden mops or mop. Tend to be pretty small. They have a thread-like appearance, 2 to 5 feet tall and wide after 10 years. And in conifers, that may not be fully grown, but in about 10 years, that's how big it's going to be. So that's kind of the growth rate we're talking about here. With all your conifers, especially when you're getting into specialty conifers, this one has bright golden new growth. I got one of these as a door prize when I was a member of the American Conifer Society. And I was a graduate student living in an apartment, so I took it home to my mother. And this was in November, so it was too late to plant. So she kept it in this little 6-inch pot. She kept it in the window of her kitchen. Come February, I visited her, and I was noticing it was still sitting in her kitchen window, and I was thinking, wow, it looks really good. It's got all this new growth. It looks great. And my mom saw me looking at it, and she goes, I don't know what I've done to it. I don't know because I'm killing it. And I thought I was doing exactly what you told me to do. And it was because she didn't realize that it was supposed to be yellow. So with specialty conifers, it's really important to know what it's supposed to look like. And I assured her that she was doing a great job, but it just came down to she didn't realize what new growth looked like. So in her mind, well, it's turning yellow. Obviously, it's dying. And in my mind, it was, you're doing a great job. Wow, I'm impressed because my mom has a brown thumb. So just be really aware when you're getting into specialty conifers what the normal is for that plant, because there can be some startling combinations that you didn't expect, and this is one of them. So the new growth, really vibrant gold, gorgeous, and then it fades to kind of a lime green later in the summer. This is another one that I don't see much of, but it does just fine here, and it's really kind of fun, I think. It's a dwarf Alberta spruce called Rainbow's End. They're going to get about 1 to 5 feet tall and wide after 10 years, and it takes that pruning to keep that nice conical shape if that's what you like. The first flush every year is a light green, so it's kind of that lime green. And the second flush is yellow to a white. So it kind of looks like a Christmas tree with tiny lights all over it. It's really fun. It's a little bit different. Again, it's one of those things you have to really love. You've probably seen dwarf Alberta spruce. They're pretty common in the landscape. They do well. This one takes the exact same conditions. It just has a little different spin on it. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I said I wasn't going to talk about blue rug juniper, and I'm not. This one is a creeping juniper related to it. It's Juniperus horizontalis called motherlode, and it's this bright, bright yellow shrub right here. Super low growing, very much a spreader. It's going to get about 4 inches tall, and then 8 to 10 feet spread, again, over that 10-year period. Super tolerant, just like your blue rugs or any of your creeping junipers. Dry to medium soils, hot, dry conditions, full sun, partial shade. It doesn't much care. It just, you plant it, let it get good and established that first summer, and after that, let it do its thing. It keeps that really bright gold color all summer. So if you want to get away from the blue or just the regular green, this is one to look at, motherlode. I wanted to throw a blue plant in there because, well, I tend to go a little hard on the golds, and that's just a personal preference. But I wanted to throw in at least one good blue one. This is another CYPRESS called Baby Blue. This one's probably going to be the hardest one to find out of all the ones we talked about. He's going to be only 1 to 5 feet tall after 10 years. Excuse me. He is truly a dwarf. He's super slow growing. And it has this really nice silvery blue foliage throughout the whole plant. A lot of times you see them and they have just on the tips, but in Baby Blue on this one, it tends to be a really nice all around silvery blue foliage that's just really lovely. And then I wanted to throw this one out there too. This is the last one I have for tonight. This is a fairly quick presentation tonight. This is actually a white pine called Blue Shag. It's becoming a little more common in the trade. Again, it's truly a dwarf. It is a white pine. It was taken off a witch's broom in Connecticut, I believe. So it's a native. It'll only get about 4.5 feet tall and wide after 10 years. So it's pretty small, but it has that nice silvery blue foliage. The pictures and conifers just don't do it super justice, but this is a nice little rounded, fun conifer. And we have a question. Oh, best places to buy shrubs. There's some really, I would say any locally owned nursery would be able to they'll either have them or they can order them for you. And with the conifers, I would say they're probably going to have to order, but there's some places around Omaha that do a nice job. I'm just hesitant to give a specific nursery, but I would look for a local nursery, and if they can't find them, let me know and I can give you some sources on the internet, because a lot of these comes from the West Coast. They grow a lot of these in Oregon, Washington, that area. So I know that was a pretty quick shrub talk, but I appreciate everybody coming tonight. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Best time to plant shrubs, great question. So we're just a tiny bit late. This month would have been a good time most years. I'm gonna caveat that. Bare root shrubs you can plant in April, 1st to mid-April is the best time to do those. Potted or balled and burlap, pretty much anytime as long as you're committed to watering them. And I said that I would give a caveat. So typically we like to plant our container shrubs usually mid-September to mid-October. But with this year, we were in a severe to extreme drought, depending on what time of the month we were talking about. So it's going to be harder to get them good and established going into winter. So I would wait until this next spring and plant then. Great question, Jane. Any other questions tonight? There's lots of great resources out there. I highly advise going to the extension store, the ISU extension store. If you go to extension.iastate.edu, up in the corner, there will be a little toggle that says store. And there's a whole category in the store on horticulture or yard and garden, something like that. But they have a tree and shrub category, and they have lots of different resources there that are really great to look at, and they're all free. Or you're always welcome to give me a call or email me at the extension office. Best shrubs near a basement foundation. I hate to sound extension-y, Jane, but it depends. It's going to depend on what is the drainage like, and it depends on what your goal is. So if it's good drainage about anything, if it's poor drainage, then we're going to have to start looking at some of the things that tolerate some wet feet. The other thing that I've noticed that people get into trouble with shrubs around dryer vents. Dryer vents can be pretty harsh on shrubs, especially evergreens. We like to hide that for whatever reason. I mean, everybody seems to have a dryer vent, but we like to hide it behind something evergreen. But the dryer vent creates a little microclimate, especially in the winter, that heats up that evergreen that indicates, oh, hey, it's time to wake up, even though the ground's still frozen. So I've seen plant samples come in that, you know, it's a U, it's next to the dryer vent, but basically it would heat up, the plant would heat up, think, oh, it's spring, I'm going to try to start taking up water, which is what plants do, but there was no water to take up because it's still middle of winter. So Jane, if you want to call me at the office sometime or next time you're in our office, stop by and we'll talk shrubs. But any of them will do as long as you have, it just depends on the goal. If your goal is, I want year-round coverage, we're going to talk evergreens. If it's, it has bad drainage and I need something that can tolerate wet feet, that's a different specialty. So that's where it gets a little iffy. Any other questions tonight? All righty. Well, thank you all for sticking with me all year. We've done the Zoom meetings, and we will be back in January. We'll start again. And Jane, I will definitely be looking forward to our chat about shrubs. We'll start again in January. We have 6 planned, but if you will kindly take the evaluation as you leave the meeting tonight, that would be great. And I love to hear new ideas for other programs. So with that, have an outstanding evening and have a great holiday season. Thanks, everyone.